You're listening to the Rock Women Podcast, where the vision is to be doctrinally sound, emotionally strong, rooted in the Word, and serving others.
Ladies, welcome back to the Rock Women Podcast. We are in our third episode of this series that we're doing on worship. I am joined here today by Lisa Winters, as always. Lisa, say hello.
Hello.
And we've been talking about worship. So Lisa, we started talking about that. We are created to worship. We are created by our Creator, who is the one true God. He is worthy of all of our worship. And we were even created in His image. Our very image worships Him and represents Him on the earth. And then we talked in our second episode about corporate worship, that there is this place, yes, for our lives should be living out this worship from Monday through Sunday, but also there is this corporate element where we get to come together as the body of Christ and we get to worship Him. Today, we are so excited that we get to dive into that music element in the church. And Lisa, we've said this several times on the podcast already, but we have been waiting for this moment.
We're excited.
So can you get us started? Just why are we talking about this topic of music today?
Well, we've said this before, but Ruth, you and I have been talking about this for really probably 4 years, really been talking on a weekly basis. We would get together and talk about really digging in the Word and finding out, are there any changes that need to be made? Like, how are we supposed to worship in music in the local body, in the congregation? And so I know, and you know, that it is powerful when believers come together and they are worshiping in song together. It's powerful. So I'm passionate about it. I've been doing this my whole life, but I feel like I have a fresh passion because I want to be more biblical in it. And so that's what we're going to talk about today.
I love it.
Yes.
And what's so exciting about today is that we have an awesome guest.
Yay!
I am so excited. We have Dawn Eckstein here today. And I want you to introduce yourself if you can, but Dawn is our music leader at our Old Town campus. Well loved.
Yes.
You are such an integral part of that music here at the Rock Church as a whole. And I know especially in Old Town. So if you just want to say hello to the people, maybe just tell them a little bit about your family, just a little background about you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love this, and I love this subject. I love the podcast. I am a wife of one and a mom of 5. And I have 3 grandbabies and 2 on their way. One is actually a week overdue, so she should be. We didn't know if we'd be able to do the podcast because she was ready to give birth a week ago. So
wow,
yeah. So about to have 5 grandbabies, I guess, total.
Yep.
And so very exciting time of life, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we are so happy that you're here. So we are just going to have a conversation today, the 3 of us. But I wanted to start off, Lisa and I had talked about just kind of starting off of letting everyone know our backgrounds on music and worship. And so I sort of love in some ways and hate in some ways that I am the odd man out of this 3-person group and I want you guys to share your background specifically with music and the worship element. But you are both so talented. The Lord has gifted you in this area of song. The Lord has not gifted me with any sort of musical ability. Okay. But He has called me to worship and He has called me to sing. And I was thinking about this, even when I first gave my heart to the Lord, the first thing is there was a song in my heart that I sang for a season. You know, I wake up in the morning and there's singing a song in my heart that I need to be singing, even though I don't have that talent and that gift. And the reason I want to specifically say that is that I do not want any listener here to sort of excuse themselves from this conversation.
That's good.
Every
Really good.
one of us should be engaged in this conversation, whether we are on stage, whether we are not, whether we have the gift of singing or music, and if we don't. And many of my family members have this bend towards music. I'm not one of them. I'm just not gifted. But this is such an important topic. And so, Lisa, can you kind of tell us a little bit of your background in music and worship?
Sure. So mine started at the age of 5. My dad was a pastor, so I was raised in the church, going Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, falling asleep in the pew, having altar time. We were Pentecostal, was raised in the denomination of Assemblies of God. I'm super thankful for my upbringing. There's things, obviously, that I look at now and I'm like, okay, I feel differently about some of those things that I was taught. But honestly, it was just some of those services that many of them really left an impression and an imprint on my heart that stayed with me. And one of those things that stayed with me was a love for the Lord and a love for singing. My dad played the trombone and sang. And so my mom played the piano and the organ. And so what began as we would have more of that quote unquote traditional, where we would have maybe a couple hymns and what we used to call choruses. Back in the day, we would sing choruses. Do you remember that, Dawn?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And so we would have some more modern choruses, but then we would have the specials. And so
I was going to say something about specials, also in the specials era.
Okay, yeah. And so, I'm dating myself, but Evie was my first singer that really inspired me. I remember I had, we always had ministers coming through. It was such a blessing to meet so many different people that were serving the Lord full time in that way. And one of my parents' friends brought me her album, and I can still see it now. And that was a seed for today, because it created a love for music and for literally singing for God. And so from there, it just went forward, and I sang every single week, instant, in season and out of season. And I loved to sing really for the glory of God. And that's my life verse is 1 Corinthians 10:31. Whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. And as a little girl, I probably could not put that into words. I probably could not. But in my heart, I had this desire that I wanted to glorify God. And I wanted whatever I did to touch people's hearts and bring them closer to Him. So we were very Pentecostal. And so all that we did in the service from the beginning to the end was very, lots of music. There was clapping and sometimes dancing in the spirit, we called it. So it was all encompassing. And our services as a child, my dad was not one of those that we had crazy services, because everything always was done decently and in order. Now, from a Baptist perspective, it would have been crazy.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But from a Pentecostal perspective, it was pretty in order and decent. So my love started there. And then I joined the choir as a teenager here in Bangor at Glad Tidings Church. And I had my pastor's wife really helped in that formation from the time I was all through high school. And it literally kept me, and I've said this before, but singing for the Lord in the choir and in church, worshiping in the music aspect in the church, kept me from the world. It kept me from loving the world, because I knew that this was my life. I just knew I wanted to be whatever God was doing in the church. I was going to be part of it. And then the rest is history. But that's really how I began.
Yep. I love that. I love you talking about like the background of that Pentecostal background. And I had a lot of church experiences like that as well. And some churches that were orderly and some churches that were not orderly, but lots of gifts of the Spirit. Dawn.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your music worship background.
Wow. We're very similar, Lisa. I didn't realize how similar. I grew up in the church. My parents got saved when my dad was in the Air Force and stationed in Hawaii. And so I remember getting mango in the balcony of the church. This little lady would pass out mango and dripping all over the place.
That's so funny and specific.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that so funny? That's what we remember. But my dad and mom just were on fire for the Lord. They grew up in the church and kind of went away from the Lord for a little while. And then when they got married young and had me, they decided they needed to follow Jesus. And so super cool. So when we moved back to Maine, where my whole family is, my dad was the assistant pastor in a little church. My grandmother was the worship leader. My aunt and mom played the accordion.
Now, the name of that church was?
It was LaGrange Full Gospel Assembly.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah. And every once in a while, I would do the special. So from a really early age, I was singing, and my dad would have testimony time and would say, Dawn, will you tell a testimony? And I'd say, Dad, just let me sing.
Yeah.
That's my gift.
Do anything not to talk.
Don't
right?
make me talk. Come on.
Me too.
Talking is not my thing, but, and here I am. So forgive me if I stumble. Yeah, I remember being in church, sleeping on the floor, and, just being a little girl and singing. And it's one of the things I knew that the Lord put in my heart is to sing for him. And I really remember a specific time when my dad was telling somebody, she's never desired to sing secular songs. And just me standing there, hearing him encourage me, like, no, I was made to sing for Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I just knew he created me to do that. And so, my parents were incredible encouragers and did all that they could do to just feed that, and do everything they could do to, I mean, I had all the lessons, all the piano lessons, I'll try this now, Dad, I'll try this. And they would provide all the things. And so, super, super cool. But I was always involved in some kind of music all through my childhood. And then I got married and we moved to Presque Isle, and we found a church there that I led worship with, my goodness, I guess for 10-ish years. And then came back to Bangor. We were in the county for 16 years, and we came back to this area, and I just started doing some music with the rock, and then here I am in Old Town leading worship there. So I love it, love it, love it.
Yeah, one thing I love to see is that your whole family does this with you. I know specifically your 3 daughters, they sing as well. So beautiful. Yeah. And your sons, right? They play instruments. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Kylie and Chloe have kind of sang beside me for a long, long time. My husband Shannon sings.
Which I did not know.
Yeah.
Yes.
He has a great voice.
Sings beautiful. His whole family sings beautifully. And then Michelet plays the bass. He's our adopted Haitian
good
worshiper.
Yeah, he's great.
And he sings. And Sophie plays the guitar. She is my worship coordinator in Old Town, and she's better than better than me now.
So good.
She's amazing, and I'm so proud of all of them. And they're all following Jesus, and it's all we ever wanted. My son, Sam, also sings. And we knew he could sing. One time we were all singing a worship song in the car, and he was just belting out these beautiful tenor harmonies. And I was like, what is happening?
Right.
So it's just, I'm so thankful.
Yeah, I love it. So I keep thinking of you, Chris, because you cannot be left out of this conversation because you actually love music as well. Who's the guy who does Dirty Jobs? What's his name?
Mike Rowe.
Mike Rowe.
Yeah.
You remind me of him because, listen.
Oh, gosh.
He's this guy. No, he's this guy, okay, from this show, Dirty Jobs. And you just think that he just does this one thing. But the more that you learn about him, you're like, oh my goodness, he sings opera. Oh my goodness, he is trained and he's gone through all this education, and you kind of are like that to me as well. So tell us a little bit about your musical background.
So I grew up in church as well, but I'm from the furthest other side of the spectrum from all of you. So I grew up in a very traditional church. It was Nazarene. It's just up the road from the Rock Church in Bangor. But yeah, there was no dancing. If you raise your hands, you'd get kind of the side eye. It was just a very conservative, very traditional church. But that being said, we were still steeped in lots of music. So even though it was traditional, it was still there. It just wasn't flamboyant in any stretch of the imagination. So my whole family. My mom sang in college all the way up through. She was in a few groups. My dad was also in a few groups. They sang together all the time. They were always doing specials together. And my sister was the same way. She actually got classically trained. And then the same for me as I came up through. And then I don't know, we didn't really sing much as an actual family together, but we did things, my sister would sing, I would sing. We were in groups of our own. And then even through college, I kind of let it go because I went into the military and there wasn't really a whole lot of outlet for that. But
Micro. There's always a twist.
Yeah. But my sister kept through. I mean, she went to college for music education, and she still does that. She still teaches music to people. She plays the violin and viola and a whole bunch of other instruments. But yeah, she teaches that, and we're still very much all, even up to my parents' death, they were very, very much into music. So yeah, it's weird. It's weird for me to come into a situation like this because I deal a lot with like self-consciousness because I didn't grow up raising hands or dancing around or anything like that. So I still feel the I don't know what the word is, like the need to do it. But when I do it, then I'm very self-aware that I'm doing it. And then I feel like it's all about me and then I stop. So I still struggle even now to be expressive in worship just because as soon as I start doing it, all I can think about is the fact that I'm doing it.
Right.
Right.
And then it becomes weird and awkward. But yeah, that's my background. So
That's
I just
awesome.
want to say, I've never seen you raise your hands. So
yeah.
I just had that thought. You raise your hands?
Yeah, it's very rare.
No
and
judgment there.
in the dark in the back. So.
Okay.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So what we want to do now is we're going to just dive into some questions that we have been talking about for years. We've been reading books, we've been having conversations, and we've been asking these same very questions about music in our church for a long time. And so I wanted just to start this off by reading from this book, Sing by Keith and Kristyn Getty.
Mm-hmm.
So Lisa actually asked Jay and I both separately to read this book, to purchase this book. And Jay has read it. He loves it. And we will actually talk more about this book in a few weeks. But I wanted to read a little bit, just a few sentences here, talking about our music today. It says, "We live in a time when the importance of music in church has been elevated greatly." I wanted to make sure I was reading the right one. Has been elevated greatly, not least because it has become commercially lucrative. But at the same time, we are in danger of lowering the importance we place on singing together. Listening to each other mumbling quietly along as a band performs brilliantly on stage in a church building is not the same as singing together as a congregation. The medieval church made the error of treating the Lord's Supper as something for the congregation to watch. As the professionals at the front participated, might not we be in the same danger of doing this with our music today? And so the question I wanted to pose here, here's a 3-part question, okay? Dive in where you want to and don't feel like we need to answer all these things fully. But here's the question. And ladies listening, I would love for you to be pondering these as well. What are we seeing in worship music currently in our culture? Because there is a music industry, right? Even within the church. How is that playing out in the local church? And what struggles is this presenting with music expectations in our church?
Mm-hmm.
And the final question, if we can get to, is what struggles is this creating with disciple making in our church? So let's start right at the beginning. What are we, as we look over the United States and even maybe just the world stage of worship music, what are we currently seeing today? Lisa, do you want to get us started?
We are going to go there, aren't we, girls?
Yes, we
And
are.
Well, the word that comes to my mind is performance. I can't think of any other word, honestly. And I think back to the first Hillsong CD, and I say Hillsongs because that really was the beginning, I think, of this quote unquote industry. I don't know if you guys would agree with that. I remember Darlene Check and that CD and how that really did transform how we viewed worship. When we actually started calling it, I think, worship in the church, not like the song service or the music.
Okay.
I think it was, and maybe I'm wrong in that.
I forgot about song service.
Yeah.
That's what we called it.
We did.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah.
Or like
yeah.
the music portion.
The music.
It became, and again, I'm coming from that Pentecostal side and perspective. And so in my brain, my personality, I'm just going to give you this real quick as a little bit of an understanding. I'm an all-in gal. And so when I go all in, and you guys know that, if I go all in, I'm all in. And so I just remember that almost like that mental switch thinking, oh yeah, this is what worship is in my mind at that time. And, but I really believe that. And some of those songs were really good. Like they were refreshing and they were really good.
Do you mean like the style? Like, oh, this is what worship should sound like?
Yeah, the style and calling it worship, having it became a movement. Do you remember it became a movement?
Yeah, I do remember that. And I don't know if I don't know if it was style for me. It was more like this production.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot. We gotta try to produce and make happen in order for it to be an official worship service. And the word worship, I do think, got changed to, it's got to look like that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. My word was entertainment.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that there is so much value placed on the entertainment aspect. And so we become consumers rather than producers. Right.
Yeah.
So like, if it's entertainment or if it's, what was your word again?
Performance.
Yep. Then, if somebody is newly saved, they come in, they're like, oh, this is the concert part of the service.
Yeah.
This is where we get entertained. This is where we watch the music happen instead of this is where we sing to Jesus together, serve one another, build each other up, make much of Jesus together.
Right.
It definitely changed that perspective for sure.
So from there, I remember I feel like it just snowballed and it started in probably the mid 90s. I remember 96, 97. And then from there, it just continued till it became mainstream, really. Like it is the thing, right? You can say, if we say worship, new worship CD, and you can name different names of some churches, it is, I know we're going into the next question, but it's a money-making thing. Let's just be honest about it.
I have that written down also.
Okay.
It's tricky when so much money gets made with the next hit worship song. So then it gets muddy. We can't serve God and money. So I think it muddies.
How do you see it getting muddy? Yeah. Like, how do you see now that money is attached to these worship songs that are being created? What is that doing with our worship song?
Well, it has to it has to be entertaining. It has to, man.
So we still want excellence, right? So we want people to know we still believe that we should be excellent.
We have to be able to speak the gospel through our music without it being distracting. If it's not excellent,
right,
or done well, then it's distracting. And I used to have a pastor that said, Lord, help us to not be so good that we're distracting, and help us not to be so bad that we're distracting.
Right.
So
that's good.
But when you guys are talking about excellence, we're talking about serving the Lord with excellence, with the gift that he's given us. Or are you talking about, which I don't think you are, an excellent production
right
on a Sunday morning? Is there a difference there?
I'm thinking. Of course there is.
Yes.
There has to be. Chris, what are you thinking?
Yes, bring it.
I think, well, kind of going back to the money part of this, I think all creatives struggle in this realm. So it's not just music.
Yes.
It's anything creative for the church,
So
whether
good.
it's art or something else. The struggle is, should I make money, or is it okay for me to make money doing the thing that I have talent for? And when you talk to somebody like a carpenter, they have no problem. I mean, if we need a church built, we pay the carpenter to build a church. That's a talent that person has, or his crew. There's no question as to whether or not you should pay that person. I don't think getting paid to write music is necessarily the problem. I think it comes in the motivation.
Yes.
So if you're writing this music because you're motivated by the paycheck, I think that's the problem. And you're writing it for the wrong reasons. But if you're writing worship music or whatever else, and your motivation is proper, earning money from it is not an issue, because creative people need to make a living too.
Right.
You know, there's
So
nothing
good
wrong
and
with
so
being
true.
compensated.
Yep, absolutely.
However, once it becomes like with some of these larger churches where they're in a huge portion of their budget for their church and the things that they do come from the sales of their albums. And they view their albums like, well, we need fill in the blank, we need a new church, or we're going to expand. So therefore, let's put out an album and make $30 million on it so we can do this next thing. I think that's where the problem comes in. It's just it's a motivation thing. Like, why are you doing it? Is it for his glory, or is it for your paycheck? You know,
That's really good. I totally agree with that.
so
That hits the root too of like the music industry is like, what is the motive behind all of this? And I think sometimes it can come across manipulative, how some of the songs are, because you want to be drawn in, because you want to maybe make more money. Sometimes I think it's shallow. Just as somebody who's not in the music industry cannot do that. That some of the music that comes out now seems a little shallow.
yeah, I think so. I think not all of it.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think a lot of the music coming out now is kind of fluff. And I don't know, it's hard to tell somebody's motivations, but it has the feeling of, well, they just needed to fill out the CD. Like, you know, it's almost like, you know, the cliche of maybe they just spun the wheel and, okay, we have grace. Let's spin the wheel again. What rhymes with grace? You know, it has
smile on my face.
Yeah, exactly. It just feels like some of those songs are like, what are we even singing about? It feels so like shallow, or there's no depth to it whatsoever. It's not even really any scriptural basis to it. But not everything's like that. So it's really difficult sometimes to figure out like, what was this written with pure motivation? Is it biblically based? That's actually pretty easy to find out. But yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of it just becomes fluff because they're trying to not really fill a quota, but they're trying to get the next album out.
Well, and also entertain. So, I mean, we can name some of these churches. I mean, Elevation is probably one that is one of the biggest, right? That they're producing. Let's just be honest. They write some very catchy tunes, and some of their songs we've done that we've really liked that have been biblical and have been great. However, I think what happens is that we have a number of people, whether it's students or just congregants in general, that would listen to this music or maybe even go to a conference, which they would call, or a worship night. And they want to bring that back, and they think that church should look like that church should sound like that. That's where I struggle as a leader. Like, that is where I struggle, because that, again, when they wrote that, if it's biblical, great. And if it's not showy, and if it's not all entertainment, great. But if it is those things, then we have a problem. That is where it's all mainstream. Like, it's all blurred. You know, you hear it on the radio. I don't even listen to any radio, but I know that it's on there, right? You can hear all the things on K-Love and your local stations where the quote unquote worship music it's all a blend. You can't really separate it. I mean, do you think I'm wrong in that? I feel like it's just all kind of in there together.
As far as
what you can hear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Before it would be, okay, this is church music.
Yeah.
This is entertainment music.
Okay.
So it's all in the same pot.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's all like, I'm just going to reach my hand in there. Oh, here, we're going to do this at church, but that's not even
like how it sounded like you're like a hymn, singing a hymn, right?
Yeah. Versus
what you hear on the radio. Mm-hmm. Now those two things blend together, and it's like there's no difference.
And if you say that's not biblical, then it seems, because we have a generation of people that have been trained up in the church. Mm-hmm. I'm talking across the country or the world, really, raised up in the church, that it's, as long as it's quote unquote worship music, it's okay. There doesn't need to be any judgment or discernment based on that. And if you do, then you're being critical.
Yeah.
This seems to be.
So I think of, like, back in high school, we would go to Christian concerts, and that was for entertainment, right? It was. And so I'm just trying to differentiate what you're saying in my mind here. And we definitely didn't sing those songs in church because it just didn't go. So I see what you're saying. I do see that sometimes some of the songs can be worshipful and can be corporate.
Yep.
You know,
see, this is where you challenge me, and I like it. This is what our conversations look like, but I like that. And I do agree with that.
And some hymns even can be difficult to be corporate.
Agreed.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they're just like, wow,
that's a hard one.
A hard time getting through that hymn because it's got, like, you know, how many stanzas and whatever. But I think, I think that was more clearly differentiated. Like in, 10 years ago, even. And now it's trying to figure out, okay, is this biblical? And can we sing this in our church services? And it's doing what the Lord asks us to do, glorifying Him.
Right.
Not putting the focus on us and, that incredible guitar solo or, that 10-second drum solo or whatever.
So I really want to get to the next portion of the question, but that says, what struggles is this presenting with music expectation in our local church? Like, are people coming to church with a different expectation? But before we kind of dive into that, is there anything positive that we're seeing in the music industry today? I know that Lisa, like, you went to a conference that just birthed so much passion in you.
Yeah.
So what is it that you're seeing that you're excited about?
Well, I think we attended the Sing conference, and I want to go so badly. I really want to go this year again and bring some people with me. But I remember going to this conference, and in my brain that was really programmed from the last few decades of, this isn't a worship conference. And so it's more, I don't know, I felt like it might be hokey. I'm just being honest, And so the Lord is wonderful and gracious. And I remember standing there, and this is when that congregational singing really hit me again, because I was raised in that, right? We were raised in congregational singing. And then I had kind of left that thinking that's old. Now it's more about performance. I wouldn't have said that, but that's really what I was thinking, right? Yep. It's going to be that cool. We want to make people think it's awesome. And, So when I went into this auditorium with like probably 10,000 people, it was amazing. And they were singing modern hymns, some old hymns, and we do some of the stuff now on Sundays. And not that crying is ever an indicator whether you're being touched by the Lord or not, but for me, when I sense the Lord's presence or when he's dealing with my heart or a song or a scripture touches me, I will well up with tears. That's just how I respond. And so I literally felt kind of embarrassed because I just stood there and couldn't stop crying. I just had tears I just kept having to, and Kirk is standing next to me and I'm just literally wiping all the tears, but it was just so moving. And that is where, and I bought this book, the Sing book there. And it's been a slow process. I've been discouraged along the way because I remember thinking, are we going to ever be able to make any of these changes? Lord, how is this going to look? Because I knew he birthed that in me. I was so passionate about it. But God's ways are not our ways, and his timing is not our timing. And that for me was what really the Lord began birthing this new idea, not new to the Lord, but for me, or really resurrecting what I once had when I was younger, when it was more about the Lord and less about Lisa.
Yeah.
Less about the team, but more about Christ and more about the congregation.
And what a relief to not strive for that performance.
Yes.
There is such a difference.
Yes.
Such a difference.
So you guys are really starting to hone into this next question. I want to really make sure that we prep it well so that the women are processing what's being said. And so, Dawn, we said a few words. So you said performance, production. What was your word for the music industry today, Dawn?
Entertainment.
Entertainment. Okay, so are those things creating a certain expectation in the local church, in music, specifically in the local church? And what's the struggle with that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on it before about like the congregation coming in and expecting this is the concert part of the service. This is where I get to consume and listen and watch and kind of just judge if I liked it or not. It's kind of about me and what I like, and rather than the corporate worship setting, corporate worship in music setting where we're all singing and we are all lifting up. We're gathered together to build each other up, to glorify Jesus. And it's not a concert. So there's less engagement.
So as you're talking, I'm thinking about our teams. I think it's been difficult for our teams to maybe understand or embrace this change, wouldn't you say? Kind of like it's been a little difficult as far as
when you say change, you mean like the recent change within our church?
Yeah, within our church of the songs that we're singing or not singing. It's been a process for us really to be able to walk through that and say, are we going to do this? Still keep doing this song and why?
Yeah, and we keep going. Okay, is this the song that we want to do, or are we going to go back to this? Let's look at this again. You know what I mean? It's
true.
Good. It's so good. It's good to process all of those things. And I think it's been healthy. I think the Lord is doing good things in the hearts of our teams. I have some that are excited about it. I have some that can very clearly see that there's a difference, and one of my college students is the most excited about, all these are so biblically sound, and he's so great. He's been so encouraging. But I think the biggest part of it is just that we're looking at the lyrics of the music and making sure that they are biblically sound, because it matters what we sing.
So that's the change that you guys are talking about, is that we're making sure that every word that we're singing is biblically sound, that in your team is having to process that out. Do you think because of worship music becoming this industry that we held on to, or you can name this, but held on to the way we were doing that so tightly, because maybe it was intertwined with our own pride or whatever it was, that it becomes more difficult to let go. Can you say why is it so difficult to let go of that way of doing it?
Well, I think pride is huge in that. And also just our personal preference. Like we really do all like different songs, and that's okay.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
yeah. And you and I have been kind of give and take
for sure
through that whole process too. Like we like different things, but you know, when you boil it down, it's not about us, you know?
Right.
Can you talk to, like, bring that into, you know, we have 10, how many people are on the stage worshiping of the team on a Sunday? What, 5 to 10 people?
Between 5 and 10, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Per campus, it varies, but at least 5 on a stage.
So, but we have hundreds coming into that music moment. So what are we seeing with them and their expectation as they're coming with the music element because of this music industry? Any thoughts there?
You're talking about the congregation.
I am talking about the congregation.
Yeah. I think there's less engagement.
Yeah.
Because of that mentality of being a consumer.
That we have become consumers.
Yeah.
Because the music, I just want to make sure that we're clear, because music has now become this industry and we see it as like we're being entertained. I really like it. It's making me feel good.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I go in and I'm not feeling so good, like then maybe I don't need to engage.
Right.
Yeah.
Or even know that I should. I think that part of it used to be pretty obvious that we're just coming together to sing together. And I don't think that thinking is maybe even obvious at all. And like needs to be revisited even because we've been trained a different way. And
do you think that the type of songs that are being written now in this industry, they're not singable a lot of times? How many times have we tried to do a song, and we purchase multi-tracks, and so we do use tracks as well. How many times we try to do a song and they're very difficult and they're not singable and it's hard for the congregation? It might be great for us.
Well, on that note, I think that's part of our culture too. We're in Maine, you know, we're in the middle of Bangor, Maine, right? And so we're not going to sing the same as, you know, when I went and visited my son's church in Haiti, you know, it's totally different.
Right.
And so our styles will be different.
That's a good point.
We can't all do the same thing. You know what I'm saying? And we have to sing the song of our people, you know, and who we are as a culture. And so I think that's part of it too.
It's not cookie cutter.
It's not. It's no. It would be nice if it was.
Yeah.
So, ladies, I want us sort of to wrap up a little bit because I know we're going to come back again for another episode, but I want us to end with a little bit of vision of what it could be. And so, could we end on this question of what should it look like when the church gathers corporately in music, and just kind of put a little vision behind that. And again, reading from Sing, we love this book, Lisa. And it says here, singing together bears compelling witness to the truth. It says to those watching on and listening in that just as we sing the same melody together, we share the same faith, the faith, not a self-made creed for a solo journey toward nowhere, but commitment to our one Lord of all, who transforms the life we live together and will bring us home to eternity. So that is a compelling vision of us coming together and singing together. So ladies, can you, Dawn, can you kind of start us off there? What should it look like then when the church gathers corporately in music?
Hold on. I feel like I have so many things I would love to open up of like 25 books. And Bob Kauflin, in his book, Worship Matters, he says that we should gather together to magnify the greatness of God in Jesus Christ through the power of the Holy Spirit, skillfully combining God's word with music. He talks about what kind of music and planning the music, very intentional, thereby motivating the gathered church to proclaim the gospel, to cherish God's presence, and to live for God's glory.
Wow.
And I love that.
So good.
It's all of the pieces.
Right.
So God intends our times together to be a means of stirring up one another to love and good works. Hebrews 10:25. Coming together to serve one another. This is not our own personal time with the Lord. This is our time to be together.
That's good.
What's the difference?
Well, have you ever, I've led worship like this. It's time to just close yourself in and close your eyes and just be with the Lord. But that's not what he intends for us to do. We are building each other up. We are worshiping together. That means we get to hear each other sing. We get to see each other worshiping our God. And that's encouraging. That's so encouraging.
Good.
We can hear testimonies of what God has done throughout the week.
Yeah. The word that comes to my mind is strong.
Yes.
And that's what happens when the body of Christ comes together. It's like there's such strength
in numbers. Right?
And so that's the same when it is with music, right? When we come together in music, it is so strong. And I've heard in the past couple weeks, our men's ministry met here in Hamden a few weeks ago, and I was 2 rooms away, and they were thundering their music. I mean, they were singing so loud. I almost felt the vibration of them in a different room, and it was just so strong. And the same this past week, our women came together.
So good.
And they
wonderful.
each brought their parts. They didn't say, I'm going to come, but I'm going to leave my part behind. No, they all brought their parts. And it was so strong when everybody came together. I love what you're saying, that it's different. It's different than personal, music, worship time.
That's our time through the week. That's our time with Jesus through the week. Yeah. And then we get to gather together. It's so incredible.
That's so good. Lisa, anything that you could leave us on, just this vision of what it could be like?
I can't add to that. Like, it's just so true. I love that. It is the difference of being in a dark room, all dark, where you don't see anybody else and it's just you and Jesus. That's it. That's you at home. That's not you at the church. So that's beautiful to really show that picture. That is what we are meant to do. And I'm excited because that, as a church, the Rock Church, that's where we're headed. And we're already there. We're getting there. And I'm just really excited to see where this is going to go, what God's going to do.
That's awesome. Dawn, thank you so much for joining us today. And I know that you're going to come and join us again. So ladies, tune in next time. Lisa, thank you so much. Chris, thank you so much. And ladies, we will see you next time.